Potential flagrant constitutional violations by IMPD. Our I-team has discovered that the department has been treating legal, lawful gun owners the same as criminals and doing it for decades. How? By putting those guns through crime scene testing without a search warrant or even probable cause. I-team 8 senior investigative reporter Richard Essex has our exclusive investigation.
The Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department has thousands of guns in the property room. Many of those guns have been involved in a crime, many have not. But every single gun that comes to the property room is sent to the ballistics lab for testing. The data from those guns is collected and sent to the ATF and entered into a national database. Now, IMPD has been doing this practice for decades, and we are told by an attorney that they have been doing this without probable cause and a possible violation of federal law and the Constitution.
Amir Nance has been patient. He says police towed his car with his firearm inside. He was not a suspect in a crime, but police kept his gun in the property room for 2 years. Nance and his firearm were escorted out of the city-county building by a Marion County Sheriff's deputy, which is standard practice. Nance and others are told not to open the sealed box containing their gun until they are off city property. What he and others are not told is his gun has been test fired. The shell casings collected and scanned for ballistics, and the information sent to ATF. IMPD Assistant Chief of Police Chris Bailey says all guns confiscated by police, regardless of the circumstances, are taken to the crime lab.
They're processed down in the citizen service section or firearms section, entered into the system as property, and then at some point they make their way over to the crime lab. Go ahead.
So for all guns?
Yes.
Now, if they're involved in a crime or not, they are processed?
That's my understanding, yes.
Mm-hmm. Do you have to have probable cause or a search warrant for those?
Not that we know of. We went back and checked how long this has been going on. We went to a former employee who came on in 1973, and it was happening in the 1970s, and she worked another 30 years here and recently retired a couple of years ago.
Attorney and Second Amendment rights advocate Guy Relford says IMPD's practice of collecting ballistics information without a search warrant or probable cause raises some thorny legal issues.
I think there are real Fourth Amendment issues. The legal questions would be, is it a search? Then is it an unreasonable search? Because that's what obviously the Fourth Amendment prohibits. But I think you're getting very, very close to that, if not crossing that line, when the gun is no longer involved in an active criminal investigation. Particularly consider the circumstance where the gun is recovered for the victim of a crime. You're the victim of a crime, but information on your gun is being generated in terms of the ballistics and put into databases. When you were the victim, I don't know what the justification for that is.
We put that question to Assistant Chief Bailey.
Is there any concern, though, from a law enforcement perspective, that we have firearms that have not been involved in a crime that are being processed? That's a Fourth Amendment issue.
Well, I don't know that our attorneys, have looked into that. There's nothing that they can find at this point, but they're still gathering that information. Most of the firearms that we have either come into our possession either because they were potentially used in the crime, they're recovered from a crime, they've been abandoned. Some are for safekeeping, but most of them you can make some link to potential for crime, and some you just don't know. To my knowledge and to the attorney's knowledge, there's never been any sort of challenge to our processes. But however, if we're not, we're looking at it now to see if it's something that we need to change. Right? I mean, it's not been brought to our attention as being an issue.
IMPD may not have heard from people. Relford has heard plenty from legal gun owners trying to get their firearms returned from IMPD's property room.
Well, that's the conversation I have all the time, because people call me all upset. I have 2 messages since we set up this interview.
In less than 18 hours.
From people saying, I need to get my gun back from IMPD. And so here's how the conversation goes. My hourly rate is $300 an hour, which is pretty low for a lawyer in this area. What's your gun worth? $700, $600, $500, $400. All right, that's an hour and a half of my time. If we sue them, it's going to take a hell of a lot more than an hour and a half. How much is it going to cost? I don't know, $7,000, $8,000, $10,000. Depends on how long and hard they fight.
Relford says IMPD's policy to get firearms returned to the rifle owner is tricky and time-consuming. The department requires a background check, fingerprints, and proof of purchase.
Because you've got an awful lot of people who are being deprived of their property with no real legal basis to do so other than, sorry, you haven't proved that your property that we took from you. What it does, it goes into a queue. It gets in line with all the other guns that are in the queue. To have ballistics run on it, where they actually test fire it so that they can compare it to other projectiles they may have recovered at crime scenes, and they run serial numbers to make sure that it's not stolen. I've been hearing that for several years.
So what happens to the information collected by IMPD? Assistant Chief Bailey says the data is sent to ATF for entry into a national database called
the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network,
or NIBIN. ATF Special Agent Daryl McCormick explains.
And we take key data, incident data from the incident information from incidents that occur. NIBIN is a cornerstone to that because NIBIN helps us connect one shooting to the other. We look at things like trace data, so where the firearms are try to determine how the firearms are being transferred from lawful use to criminal use.
Special Agent McCormick says that the firearm data given to them is supposed to be for guns involved or suspected to have been involved in a crime. IMPD is sending data from every firearm, which could be a violation of ATF policy.
Well, they've been recovered by police, and there are several different categories, but they should be suspected of use or recovered from some. So, not for the most part, yes.
3 ARs.
Mike Williams had 20 of his guns stolen 2 years ago. 4 of his guns have been recovered by police after a suspect was arrested and convicted. Williams told me the property room can't find his guns.
At this point, they don't even know. The last time I've talked to them is that they would look into it, and I even give her my case number. They couldn't even find the case number, and the case number has all the weapons listed. I've got all my serial numbers.
In order to prove proof of purchase, Williams needed a receipt. The process of getting that receipt is cumbersome.
This store we average between 20 to 30 traces a week. I can just tell you in the last 4 hours, we've received 3 traces.
Burge says his store has seen a marked increase in the number of ATF and customer traces in the past 2 years. IMPD says they are taking a hard look at their policy.
We're looking at everything from top to bottom now to see. I mean, if we're sending guns over there unnecessarily, slowing lab work down, we don't want to do that either, right? So it's important we understand both processes, and like we said, I've never been brought to our attention that there's an issue. And so we are now digging into it to see what we're testing, what should be testing, what's the authority to test, and what do we need to adjust in order to not do the things we shouldn't be doing and do more of the things we should be doing.
Bailey says there are close to 21,000 firearms in the property room. Most are believed to have had some connection to a crime, while others are not.
At the end of the day, we don't want to create case law either, right? So if we need to make adjustments, something that's been going on for 50 years, we'll make those adjustments, right? Nothing nefarious here, but I'm also cognizant of using technology to make sure we solve other crimes, that we don't put a gun back into a murderer's hand, or we don't give a gun away that's associated with another crime and then disappears, and we're not able to give a family justice, but we also want to follow the law.
IMPD says that they are taking a look at all of their policies from top to bottom. And they say if the lawyers say they need to make changes, they will. But so far, we haven't heard of any changes being made. In Indianapolis, Richard Essex, Wish TV, IT Made.